And good evening, everyone. And yeah, look at that. I figured I'd have to play with the audio settings a little bit because, well, that's what happens when you go between using Voice Meter and not for streams. So, as people can tell, yeah, bit of a relaxed chat tonight, just talking about some stuff and things that have been going on, coming up, and happening all around. And for those who are interested in joining the discussion panel itself, we are here on the Discord server in the basic chat. So feel free to come on in, be respectful, and we'll actually get to the topics. So the first big thing for those who haven't been aware and paying attention, there has been an issue with the user that many of us have seen in live chats and helping on Discord, they and them, otherwise known as the Bacon God, where he helped out a family member who has since tried to screw him over financially. Isn't that all how it always works, though?
Absolutely.
Kind of shitty. So we do have a link to his PayPal in the description if you feel like throwing a little bit his way to help him get out of the hole that combination he and his family member put him into. He does a lot of things for a lot of the creators. We are planning on having a more regular type of charity drive event later this week for him in his honor to involve a number of other content creators, including Radical, Creaky, and possibly even Conspiracy Cats. Details are getting finalized, so once it is set in stone, we will be letting you all know. In the meantime, there is something a little more of a foundational type thing going on, which is actually why, thanks to the help of Chesh and Bullionator, we have Helios here with us. For those who have been paying attention, you guys already know. For those who haven't, over the past couple months, I've been annoyed with what I have seen as something that has been lacking from the social support structure that is offered to many of the veterans here in the U.S. And I believe I have identified a big hole in the net that we as service members have at our disposal. And rather than have people who fall into that criteria get stuck with the answer of, sorry, you don't meet these criteria for us to be able to help you, I feel that it is our responsibility to step in and close those gaps. So with that, I've started all the legwork to fund, found, and launch a nonprofit, a charity, with the goal of helping service members in need who don't fit the criteria for other aid programs for whatever reason, catered to their specific situation that they're dealing with. The working name for the organization right now is quite aptly Veterans in Need. And from what Cheshire Vic has told me, Helios, you, at least in your professional passive, worked directly with the VA, or was it for the VA?
Oh, neither. I've not done
Ah,
either of those things. I worked in insurance. I actually still work in insurance. I've
ah,
done both pharmaceutical benefits with the TRICARE system,
that's what
and
it was. TRICARE, the TRICARE connection. I knew there was one of them. I thought I heard VA, but no, TRICARE is.
yep,
For those who don't know, TRICARE is the medical insurance coverage program that covers active duty dependents, and also a large number of retirees and former military members who are eligible for coverage due to service related conditions.
and I've also worked in Compass Rose, which is kind of the I well, in the company I worked for, we joked that it was the spy version of TRICARE because you're always sending medication off to like Iran's embassy with just the name John Smith on the bottle.
Oh,
So
and
I've also done medical insurance for those in addition to the pharmaceutical.
nice. All right, so at least on that side, you do have a bit of that, and also the more so the inner workings with TRICARE and that benefit system, and how personal story on my side. For me, one of the final straws. It was definitely a factor in my decision to leave the U.S. Navy in the time frame that I did, because TRICARE, in their infinite wisdom, rejected a request for a follow-up appointment for my son on the grounds of the travel cost. More specifically, the travel reimbursement, which was a whopping $50. And because of this decision, they were putting my son's eyesight at risk. And that just left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, there. Here's the thing with TRICARE coverage. It's actually one of the best coverages available on the market. Just straight up from someone who has worked with pretty much every single type of coverage out there. TRICARE is amazing in that regard. But
beats the shit out of the VA. That's all I can say.
yeah, but it is very exact. It will cover what it will cover, and that is it. It doesn't like when you try to go around or get a claim for something that doesn't normally work with. Um, for example, you probably could have gotten that claim covered had they resubmit the claim and just dropped the travel portion of it.
Well, the issue with that were the locations, and I even mentioned that, and they said they couldn't do that because at the time I was stationed at NAS Whidbey Island. So, for those who don't know, it's a good 2 to 3 hour drive north of Seattle. The medical care facility that the follow up was scheduled at, which is a location that actually just a couple months prior my son had an appointment at that was approved, was down at in Tacoma at the Air Force Base down there because of the neonatal ophthalmologist who is the only one in the TRICARE network, in the military healthcare network in the area. There were no other options for the specialty, and they approved it one time. The doctor says, okay, I'm going to need you guys to come back for a follow-up in 60 days. So 30 days prior, we go through the system to schedule that follow-up. They see the request for it, but they deny it because of the travel. And there wasn't even the travel reimbursement option for me to say no. It was just, well, because of these numbers and because he was already there and there was nothing found, we don't see the need to go back. Mind you, this is a bureaucrat, a number cruncher, making that decision, saying, no, if it wasn't for the travel reimbursement, yeah, we could let it go through. It's like, well, then I'm going down there anyways, whether you reimburse it or not.
Now, who said that they couldn't
TRICARE.
drop off the... Well, TRICARE said that they couldn't reimburse the claim because there was a travel portion, but did you try to contact the doctor and ask the doctor to submit without the travel reimbursement?
Yep. The doctor down there said all that I put in for is the request for follow-up due to the condition. Through the hospital down there, they did not put the travel reimbursement on there. Where the travel reimbursement got put in was when TRICARE was looking at it on their TRICARE themselves. Their initial screening was, oh, it's down at this military facility, but you're stationed up at this one. So this travel, because you're outside of the travel bubble, the travel reimbursement has to be on there.
Okay, so it was something that the insurance itself was adding in there
Yep.
because TRICARE is one of the few insurances that will actually do that. Normally, any other insurance you go to, they don't have editors to it. It is just whatever the doctor submits is what the claim is. But TRICARE, because they have all of the rules, which are supposed to be benefits, but sometimes they can screw up the claim processing. Um, yeah, I mean that one's kind of one of those things where the only way you could get that to go through is to be the squeaky wheel that just immediately asks for a supervisor. And honestly, it doesn't sound to me like that one was properly being adjudicated because normally with those things, if it got cleared there, you are expected to have a follow up.
Yep.
If this had been your third or visit, then I could see that. But a follow up on the after the initial
Well,
should have gone through.
so the bigger scheme of this, my son was born exceptionally premature. Like, he was right at the threshold of viability when he was born in Okinawa. He required a medical relocation from, excuse me, from the U.S. Naval Hospital in Okinawa, first to Tripler Army Medical Center in Hawaii. Then we ultimately got restationed to the Seattle area because he fell under the EFP, the Exceptional Family Member Program, which means my term being stationed overseas was cut short by about 6 months because of it. So I was in an early relocation from overseas because of that. We got stationed in that area, and with all of the follow on, this was all follow on stuff from his premature birth. So that's where it was the second appointment with the ophthalmologist in, oh God, what was that? Madigan Medical Center, which was the local ending of those appointments, but the actual ophthalmology portion started at Tripler. So that's where it really ends up being a funky situation when you have those many hops for a grander scheme issue.
Yeah, moving around a lot isn't something that's also friendly with TRICARE. They like you to be fairly stable. It works best when you're at one doctor because the doctors don't necessarily communicate with each other on what's everything's cleared. Or also the file just doesn't.
Yeah.
Real quick question here
Yep.
for you. Um, Now, you may not know this because it's handled by the doctor's office normally, so a lot of people don't. But do you know if your doctor did a prior authorization for the treatments, the checkups and stuff?
The ophthalmology, to my knowledge, we were informed that he would need at multiple appointments during his first 6 months of life to make sure that he doesn't go blind. But we were not staying in Hawaii because, which is where we were informed of that, because Hawaii falls under the out of continental U.S. assignments, and because of his conditions, even though Tripler was better suited for it than the military medical centers in Japan, because Hawaii still classifies as the out of continental U.S., it wasn't an option for me to get stationed at Pearl Harbor or at Marine Corps Air Station Kenoi Bay. I had to come back to the continental U.S. So even though we got the information from there, and to my knowledge, everything was put in at that point, because there was the second relocation that happened before he was even 2.5 months old. Then we finally ended up at the final place we were covered while on active duty.
Yeah. See, this is where a lot of the behind the scenes stuff takes place, because your doctor told you all that, which is great and probably absolutely true. Um, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they contacted your health insurance and said, "Hey, health insurance, here's what we're going to do with this patient. Here's why it's medically necessary." Um, a lot of, and this is true for all insurances, for anyone who's listening, um, a lot of medical insurance is simply just the doctor calling the insurance and telling them why it's medically necessary that they do said thing prior to said thing being done. Um, you'd be surprised at how much headache you can solve just by making sure your doctor has done that. It can be the difference between taking a year to get your claim processed and paid, and
Mm-hmm.
it being processed and paid without you having to fight.
Yeah, and that's where when I saw it was something, when we got that initial pushback of it wasn't even an over the phone went or email in response to the submission for the appointment. It
Oh,
was a,
would have
it
been
was
by
a
mail.
letter
Yeah.
response, and as soon as I got that and got the same answer over the phone from TRICARE, what I ended up doing is this is knowing ways around and through the system. I called the doctor down at the office at Madigan. I was like, "Hey, here's what they just came back with." And the ultimate resolution that he ended up doing was he himself put in the appointment with the patient information to make sure that the spot was there, and pretty much forced TRICARE to deal with it on the back end. In
Hmm.
Instead of having them fill the spot, he went back his way. It's like, oh, they're playing this game? No, they won't. I'm putting you in. They cannot tell me not to schedule a patient in this manner, and they will have to figure out their payment and coverage of it on the back end. So he essentially shifted the burden off from them dealing directly with me for reimbursement and payment to where it was just going to be TRICARE dealing with Madigan to make sure the numbers and everything jived, and people who needed to be billed and got covered accordingly through their financial side of the house.
Yep. And that's a very good thing to do. Your doctor can be a very good advocate for you, especially your doctor's aides, and other things along those lines. If you ever decide you want to do it yourself, one important thing to note is the person that you call, when you call that number to get help, is the bottom rung person in the company.
Mm-hmm.
They are paid about as much as the janitor.
It's the call center. That's who you're
Yeah.
dealing with. They have their scripts. They have any notes that are on the account that they can
It,
access. They have limited authority to make
yeah.
actual decisions.
And they're not even generally running off a script. They're not programmed robots. I've done that job before too. But they don't have any power. They have literally no power. They can read your plan document, which is something that you can request for yourself. Just understand it's 120 pages generally, um, and quote it back to you. And then they can look at the claim and see why it's failing and try to finagle a way to make it work with your rules, but they can't change anything with your rules.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing wrong with asking for a supervisor. If you call in and they can't help you, they are begging you in their mind for you to ask for a supervisor, because someone higher up the ladder has the ability to actually go in and say, we can make an exception here, or we can do this here, or if we change the way it's processing like this, it'll work. And they can force that through. It's just that first person you call, no ability, no power
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever.
No, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize as well. And so, getting back more to a little more of the main purpose here to let people know the reason and the goal of, I don't know if I want to call it a foundation yet, or really, it is initially being um, set up as a nonprofit organization to be an advocate, be a a sounding board, being a reference for advice on how to deal with these sorts of issues, as well as being there with a financial parachute option for the people who are in need in that aspect. It really is looking at being a multifaceted, whole picture type approach to giving assistance and aid to former service members and their immediate families when dealing with these types of issues when they're no longer on active duty. Because while on active duty, a lot of the safety net is easier to access because you really do have more of a direct site and an easier network to deal with. And a lot of people who leave active duty end up having their own gaps in their own social network and their own background in that aspect that cannot be as readily filled in, and it can be daunting and intimidating and even a bit discouraging at times.
One suggestion for that is maybe put a bit of focus on mental health benefits.
That is number one on my list, because my own personal side of it is I've noticed where the mental health aspect of people leaving active duty, and even people who haven't been associated with the military in general, there really is a negative stigma when it comes to the mental health aspect and needing to take care of yourself so you can take care of other people and the other people in your life. And that's why I don't want people to think this is just about financial support and a typical charity in that aspect. No, this is about that whole approach, because one of the, actually, for those who have been on my YouTube channel and watching long enough, know that the weekly veterans talk show panel that I host on Friday nights, that really did start out with the primary premise of providing a community access for people to be able to get together and talk. Because one of the first things you need to be able to do to get the help you need and address a lot of the mental health issues, especially, is knowing that you have someone to talk to no matter the situation. And that's really where that started, is that providing that avenue for other veterans to get together to still have that community, still have that stronger safety net of a social network, even though they are no longer on active duty. It really was building that community and helping each other. Yes, most of the shows end up being us kicking back, making fun of things, sitting back and laughing, but there are a couple members in the community who have thanked me and thanked Team Skeptic, who actually helped spawn the idea for having that panel show for that reason. Even though we're not medical professionals helping towards that, we're providing an outlet to help that person cope, help them deal with things, and then when they've had a relapse, they've had an issue where their own mental health state was dragging them down, there were people that they could reach out to talk to end up helping get through a rough patch. And that's really what I want to continue doing, both personally and professionally, is helping people, not just by giving them a crutch and helping pull them along, but help them help themselves. And sometimes you do need to drag them a little bit to help keep them going so they don't fall off the cliff. And one of the organizations that I constantly refer to for people who want to understand just how pervasive this is the organization known as 22 Kill, where over the past few years, it has been an average of 22 former service members a day are committing suicide for reasons that they know, but as a direct result of the situations they are dealing with in their life. That needs to stop.
Yeah. Do you want to know something really messed up about that statistic?
Hmm.
From the insurance side, one of the disqualifying things for coverage is self-harm. So if you try to kill yourself and you fail and you just horrendously injure yourself and have to go to the hospital and they have to help you get better, that hospital visit will not be covered.
See, now, situations like that, pardon my French, piss me the fuck off. Just
Yep.
it's situations like that that if the insurance companies aren't going to do it, if these organizations who are supposed to be the ones helping in these instances aren't going to do it, then we need to step up and do it for them and give them the finger and show them how it's actually done.
There is quite a few doctors who will actually put in ICD-10 codes for accidental injury in place of self-harm. Explicitly for that, because that tends to also be a common exclusion in other insurances also. No one wants to help the depressed. No one wants to help the guy who's sitting there, driven to hurt themselves. But he's the one that needs help the most. And not even before that, just going to a psychologist is a nightmare to get covered. They have limits on how many times a year you can go, caps on like which ones are you can see. The benefits for it to usually cover less.
Yeah.
And they all require prior authorization, which means your doctor has to say why it's medically necessary. And if your doctor can't convince the insurance that that's medically necessary for you, then you're fucked.
Yeah, and see, and some people have asked how much do I utilize the VA and my benefits coverage through there when it comes to the medical side of things. And honestly, I didn't utilize them very often because of those games. I actually found, because I've been lucky enough to be I haven't had a problem finding employment after leaving the military. I'm I've spent a grand total officially of maybe, 90 days without a job since I left active duty. And outside of that time, my health insurance coverage from my private employer was actually able to cover what my needs were, to the point where when it comes to the mental health side of it, there were no questions for coverage for me getting my own help and coverage in that way. It's actually how I found out that just how far back my clinical depression goes. Like, I didn't realize where a lot of the roots of it really came from until I got into that office and was actually able to take that time and work towards it. And yeah, I still had some costs out of pocket because I was going through my employer based private insurance, but it was so much easier than if I was still active duty or if I only had the TRICARE and VA system option. And again, that sort of stigma, that sort of view of someone proactively wanting to get the help before a larger issue comes up should be embraced and championed instead of the derision that it gets a lot of time. Because that's the biggest thing. Admitting you need help is the first step to getting out of the situation. We should not be looking down on people in any way, shape, or form when they are able to admit, no, I have a problem and I need help.
I would love to see them reclassify that type of mental health visit as preventive care, because preventive care under TRICARE is no deductible, 100% coverage.
Oh, 1 minute debunk asked, "Oh my God, what's up?" 1 minute debunk. We are actually talking about the underpinning and underlying reasons why I am starting the nonprofit that over the last couple months I've decided to, and it really comes down to a number of the issues we've already talked about, but just the overall uh, gaps in the help and safety net that primarily veterans do not have compared to other people. Now here is the big picture thing. The A lot of the foundation stuff that I can get done on my own is done or is at a stopping point because I lack the funding to finish getting the process further along, which is why I have the GoFundMe, which is why I have the other link that goes to a profile on an angel investor site, because when I crunch the numbers to get this off the ground and get it funded to the level that I believe necessary to start providing the entire scope of help and counseling and assistance that I want to be able to provide, it is a large number. I think a lot of people would be shocked at how high the actual overriding price tag is just to get it funded, founded, and started, and provide an operating budget to provide the services just to cover for the first year, just to cover the calendar year of 2020. The number that has been calculated by myself and a couple business accountants who are familiar with the type of company and what we're looking at, the target goal is between 500 and 750,000 for the first year. That is including all the foundational costs, which include office space, covering that office space, all the technical side of it, of having the actual capability to field the number of calls that are even on a conservative estimate to come in, and also having the mix of dedicated full-time staff as well as having a program set up so people can volunteer their time even just to be someone to answer the phone and help the other person navigate through. So, and then of course there's the actual benefit side on the end. So when I say this is going to be a nonprofit, that is exactly it. It is going to be not for profit. However, the people who are dedicating their full-time work to it, including myself, there is overhead to provide the options. But I'm actually looking at a organization like God, the name is escaping me at the moment, but it's the foundation that Gary Sinise started after his involvement in the movie Forrest Gump. They run at near 90% of their revenue goes directly to the beneficiaries. And that is a goal, that is a target threshold that I aim to achieve, that 85% plus going to the people who need the help, with the rest of it covering all of the overhead.
One thing I noticed about the military in general, when the service member separates and happens to be, disabled because of a military, accident, they'll rate you, and you'll go through your profile in the military and actually get a rating there, and then they'll do their damnedest to find a way to not pay you. If you don't comply with what they want to do, they'll be like, oh, well, you're going to evaluation board, and they're going to find any little bit of dirt they can to not pay you. And I know that's kind of normal for insurance, is to not pay claims, but in my opinion, it's like you're doing a disservice to somebody who gave a significant portion of their life to you.
Yeah, and that was another aspect to it. My current VA disability rating is lower than it should be, and part of that is because of a what is believed to be a misjudgment of their determination of the rating concerning a back injury that I have had since 2006, if I yeah, 2006, because it was in the middle of my time in Japan when the injury took place. So they've recognized that, yes, this is service connected, but the issue is the percentage application of that for everything else. And it really is that. A lot of the decisions are a numbers game, because from what I have been able to find from my research, a lot of it comes down to the VA's ability to appropriately handle their actual workload, but also to fund their actual operations and the benefits payouts if everyone didn't face that negative adjustment in their disability ratings over time. And if the VA is as overtaxed and underfunded as it appears to be based on their reportings and their findings, it makes sense why there are those decisions taking place. But at the same time, if those numbers have been, excuse me, manipulated in such a way that they're not an honest representation of what's going on, and people are falling through cracks as a result of it, that's where the other aid programs and organizations that are already in place start to step in. But I don't think they have stepped in enough. I don't think they have set everything up to where they can help the entirety of the group that's falling through the cracks. So we really do have multiple tiers, where your top tier, your first step, really should be the VA. And then as you fall through the cracks there, that's where the other organizations come in. And they do catch a lot. They do catch a lot that the VA is either slow or unable to take care of for their reasons. But then there are still those who fall through those cracks. And that's where I want to come in and help out the rest and start and really help foster that helping out each other. Because as a business, as a country, as the world at large, if we don't take care of ourselves and each other, nothing else matters. If we're not taking care of the people, it doesn't matter what you are doing in other aspects.
There is an important thing to also note here. In specifically that regards to your sentiment just there. I can't speak about the VA. As I said, I haven't worked for them in any regard. To me, they were the same as like St. Joseph's Hospital. You know, they were basically a chain of hospitals run by the military that you guys had. But TRICARE, you think TRICARE is a thing, and it's not. It's a contract. TRICARE isn't a set organization. It is specifically the DoD's contract that they bid out to any company. CVS takes bids on it. Meritain takes bids on it. Express Scripts takes bids on it. Basically, whoever wins the TRICARE contracts has to put a section together of people, and they become TRICARE for the next 5 years. Because that's how long the TRICARE contract runs. It's actually the most profitable contract in all of pharmacy benefits. It's the largest one in the world. That when you look at how they run things and what they do, don't come to it thinking about, oh, this is from the government. Come to it thinking about, this is coming from a corporation. The corporations don't love you. They don't care what you did in the military. They don't have any of those concerns. They have the letters of their contract that they will follow to a T. And as long as you can fit within those letters, you're great. And if you don't, they'll kick you to the curb. It's
Well,
not.
I was just going back all the way to the PEB and the military evaluation that even gets you rated in the first place. Because there's a military one and there's a VA one, and they're two separate things. So,
And I'm just saying, what he said about us needing to take care of each other, whether you're military or not, is 100% true. Because all of these benefits, all of these services that we're getting and looking at, everyone that makes a decision on your coverage is in some way or shape part of a corporation that really doesn't care about you. I hate to say this because it's kind of disheartening, but it's just a numbers game. They get paid a certain amount of dollars. All of that money is pooled together, and as long as they pay out less benefits than that pool of money, they make a profit. The more that they can keep of that pool, the higher their profit.
Yeah.
That's how your insurance works.
Yep. And that's another thing when and it's really interesting that this really is such a large portion of talking about this, because a couple days ago I came across a video where someone had done street interviews with people in the UK, asking them about the cost of certain general and typical average medical procedures and how much a random person in the UK thought it would cost in the US. Now, one of the issues that I found with the video, which I would have to look in further, but is, I believe off the bat, the majority of the numbers they were using were not actual out of pocket averages of what people pay if they have insurance coverage, but what it is, the typical billed cost, which is reduced by having the insurance coverage. And I think there ends up being a misunderstanding when you cross that cultural boundary between the way the system is set up in the US versus the way it's set up in the majority of the European nations, where, from my understanding of both, I believe that a lot of the European side of things, they don't understand how much their healthcare actually costs, because a lot of the cost is absorbed through their personal taxes that just go generally to the government for the government to handle how they have it earmarked out. So they don't realize how much of the healthcare system they are actually funding in that instance, on top of anything that they have to pay out of pocket for.
Just out of curiosity, how familiar are you with how your insurance actually processes a bill, either medical or pharmaceutical?
I would say above average, because I've looked into it a lot, because I've actually evaluated all of the insurance options available to me at each private employer, as well as there was a short time in between where my now wife and I were self-employed through the business that she had started, so we were looking at getting coverage as a business owner from that aspect too. So even just bidding out and evaluating your options as a medical insurance for an insurance provider for on the business side of it, I've experienced firsthand on it that way. And to my understanding, I'm going to try to be as specific as possible, but still keep it at a low enough level that an average person can understand. So bear with me on this. From my understanding, the way the insurance companies in the U.S. work when it comes to billing with a medical facility, the medical facility, of course, sets their pricing because they are their independent operations. They may have a partnership with a single or multiple insurance companies to then adjust what the insurance company will actually cover of that price. And then any difference is either covered via a copay or an out of pocket cost to the patient themselves.
Yep. Yeah, that is very, very close. So, like, that's a good high level analysis, a general overview. Just to help smooth it out, um, you're correct. The medical facility has their initial price that they submit to the insurance. That initial price is then run against the insurance network negotiations with the hospital, or the doctor, or the ambulance, or whatever service you received. The that will generally reduce the price by, well, over half. It's truly ridiculous how much you see those prices jump down. I've seen a $2,000 bill go to $200 bill before. Then it's run against the insurance. Your insurance always runs in the same manner: deductible, copay, coinsurance. It takes it off in that order. Um, Generally, you'll only apply to one of those before the whole bill is covered. But in the event that you have something that crosses the boundary, like let's say you had a $100 bill and you had $1 left in your deductible. Well, that first dollar of that $100 bill would be deductible, and the 99% after that would be to your copay or coinsurance. Whatever is remaining after they've gotten all the money from your company, that bill goes to the patient. Um, for pharmacy benefits, and there is one more step that happens after the insurance, which would be in pharmacy deductions. These would be your copay cards, stuff that will help lower the price further. But that happens outside of your insurance. Your insurance actually doesn't even see when you use those. As far as they know, you paid 100% of the bill. It it helps to actually know that procedure for when you're waiting on your medical bill, to know why it's taking it a month to happen. um,
Oh, I agree, and even then, speaking to how that works, part of knowing that and looking at that and trying to predict that is actually what led my wife and I to change from a traditional PPO or HMO option plan to where we actually went with an HSA plan, so we knew what our out of pocket costs were going to be and how it broke out before we went to any medical visits to begin the year. It was actually a really nice way to simplify that predictability. So we knew we so under an for those who don't know, here in the U.S., under an HSA program, you have two thresholds to worry about. You have your first out of pocket limit, which means it essentially works as a deductible. Any medical costs up to that first threshold, you as the patient are 100% responsible for. However, that's where the actual HSA monetary fund comes in, because you pay with it from that account. So it's pre-tax dollars dedicated for medical costs, ends up being helping out on your end of year taxes. So you have that first threshold you hit where you're responsible for 100% of that negotiated bill up to that threshold. After that threshold, the percentage of liability drops to 20% until you hit your second threshold, which is your out of pocket maximum. And then anything beyond that dollar value is covered entirely by the insurance company.
You want to know how they actually program that into the computers?
Sure.
You have 3 accounts that are programmed, or not 3 accounts, but 3 limits that are programmed into your account. You have your HSA, which is a countdown. Basically, it gets loaded with funds. As bills comes in, it counts down. Deductible and out-of-pocket maximum. The first part where you're paying with the HSA is actually just going to your deductible. All you're doing with that is paying your deductible with money preloaded on the card. No different to the insurance company than if you were paying out of cash. After you've hit your deductible maximum, then it goes to your out-of-pocket maximum with your coinsurance and copays. Technically, if you still have money on your HSA, you could use your HSA card at that point. It's just set up so that they will be exhausted at the same time.
Yep.
But it's just fun. A lot of people think that it's like, oh, I pay with this and that's my HSA limit. No, that's just your deductible.
Yeah, and that's where I made sure to phrase it like it's that in between, because it really does work out that way to where the numbers do kind of overlap in what is for and how it's utilized, and it ends up being, for those who actually look at it, unless you are expecting a lot of doctor's visits, for many people it is actually a better financial decision to go with an HSA based plan versus a traditional plan. And it actually ended up, while on the front face of things, it looked like we were paying more out of the paycheck to fund our healthcare in that aspect. We were actually ending up saving money because that additional cost coming out was going into the dedicated fund, which is actually a rollover fund. So it's not like a flexible spending account where at the end of the year there's a use or lose limit where you can overfund the account in that aspect. On an HSA, the money you put in there is the money that's in there, and it rolls over from year to year if you don't use the entirety of it. So
Yep. I prefer the HSA to the HRA. HRA is kind of like a flexible spending account.
Yep.
So it's use it or lose it. My HSA actually for me is high enough right now where if I were to break my leg or something, I'd go to the doctor and not have to pay a cent. It's enough to actually cover my full cost for my full out of pocket, because I just haven't had to use it.
Yeah, and that whole thing really does get interesting in that aspect with people for that reason. And that just goes to show, and this is part of the overriding premise that I want with veterans in need, is having these avenues and having this information and this experience to share with others so they can make the best decision for themselves, whether they're getting other aid from the organization or not. It really is that the overriding mission really is to help people help themselves. And it really does come down to the premise that I used as my managerial style when I was both doing the business with my wife and with when I was a supervisor in the military. If I wanted to make sure that the mission or the goal got taken care of, I had to make sure that my people were ready and capable of doing it. So I went with what is now an older school mentality of it, where if you take care of your people, your people will take care of the mission. And that really is struck a chord with me and stayed there for as long as I can remember, because it really is that. How can you reasonably expect to achieve a particular mission if your people that you are assigning to achieve that goal are ill prepared for it?
No, I fully agree. Oh, while this is on my mind, and we're talking about the different types of insurance, a fair warning: if you ever see an offer for an insurance called short-term major medical,
Oh no.
do not. um, I People heard that those were exempt from the ACA, so I got a lot of people signing up for those because screw Obamacare, and then not realizing that, oh wait, the ACA actually did a lot of really good things and ended up getting screwed. Do Just do not ever. They're not worth it. You would be better just pissing into the wind for what they cover.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There are a lot of gimmicky products like that I've seen come out over the years that just my bullshit meter, it ends up getting pegged. I don't know if they're still a thing, but for a while there were a number of companies pushing reverse mortgages. And it's like, that just sounds like a bad idea just off of the name of it. And when I looked into what they were out of curiosity, I was right. It was essentially you were selling your house off slowly to get money in your pocket. So you were pretty much reversing the role with the bank. And it was targeted primarily at people who were later in life and either approaching or already past retirement age, which, oh, that just gave me all sorts of creeps.
Hmm?
uh, and hey, we have a new member to the channel. Welcome, C4. And actually, I think this is actually a good point. One of the viewers who was actually in here listening earlier does have a similar connection that I'm interested to hear this story. So Corpus Defectus is going to be coming in. He actually typed out a story out in the live chat and sent it on a DM, and I will apologize. I didn't get uh, to read it at the time because of the conversation going on.
Don't sweat it. You got stuff to do, man.
So, so go ahead and give your story there, and let's go ahead and unpack this.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack actually. There's a game called Evil Line. It's a sandbox game, and it's basically a reflection of our society, but then the military side. It works with corporations, alliances, and coalitions. Now, I ran a corporation named Groningen Industries. And basically, I was in an alliance. The alliance leader dropped one of his members because he couldn't handle the PTSD side of him. He was an ex-military man, and basically, I had to play shrink to that guy because in real life he just couldn't release the stress he had built up in his military life, and that man basically was a broken shell of the man that he could be, just because of what he had endured. And well, I, I just had to like be there for him and let him rage without like trying to I basically listened to him, and I got through to him in his own words better than his own shrink did, just because I listened and I showed that I cared, and that I actually convinced him that he dealt pretty well with the awful things he had to go through. Basically, I let him rage to me, and like, so that he could vent, and because that's what those people need. But also things that made me really mad about stuff that he endured after, like people not caring for him, but also that he had to travel like for miles to get his medicines, and things are very awful for ex-military people, at least in America. And that's basically, in short, the story I just told. And there should be more people like taking care of those people. You don't know the suffering they go through, even after they served. It's ridiculous. And especially like the care is definitely not enough. And also I think that's an issue in Europe. But I'm not like, I dealt with this man, and he was like a strong man, but totally a broken shell of what he actually could be. But he was my best man. He could get stuff done, and
Hmm.
so I took it on me to take care of him, and and it actually kind of still makes me emotional how that man is treated by as well society as the insurances and the medical service that he got. For instance, if you got to travel like for 2 hours just to get your medications to just go around and be a normal, for as far as that's possible for a guy with PTSD, person in society, and it's ridiculous.
No, exactly, and I think that's where uh, what I'm doing here, what I'm doing on the main show of the channel here really does go towards is providing that avenue, letting people know. Honestly, I'll say this right now, veteran or not, if you need someone to talk to, there are plenty of amazing people in my Discord server, and the only restrictions on my Discord server are there are a couple segments that are available to patrons and channel members, but other than that, it's free reign in there. You can find someone to talk to about just about any topic, and even if you need advice on a situation or if you just need to vent, someone's around. And that is the type of community I love that I've been able to be a part of to this point, and I want to see it continue, and I want to see it be better, be larger, actually grow further and do better for everyone. Whether you agree with them on a topic or not, you can still treat people with a certain level of respect and decency.
Absolutely, that's what I meant, man. That Yeah, yeah. And to be honest, if anybody is here or outside of the stream, if you need somebody to shout at, I can take it. I promise you. I did it before, and I know it helps. It just helps to get stuff out of your head without being judged.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where. And another thing, one of the featured videos I've had on my channel really has said, come ask me anything. It doesn't have to be whether or not something's going on or anything. If you're curious about something, if you're curious about anything you've heard anywhere and you're looking for someone to talk to or you're looking for verification, ask. I mean, for those who don't know, one of our community pillars, Sean Hufford, a number of months back, he was facing a situation that he actually had resigned himself to just kind of dealing with the fallout and kind of just let things happen and then sort it out after the fact. And I was the one who stepped up when he told me what was going on. I was like, no, that's not an option. There are too many people here around you to let that happen. You have us here, and that's where it started. It started out with just those of us who are friends in the background, just, hey, this is what Sean told me, this is what's going on. We're not letting that happen. And we got things rolling from that way. We got a lot of progress that way. He still needed some help at that point, and then I brought it to the public and the larger community to make sure that he was taken care of, because it really is that. If we want to make sure that we continue to progress as a people, both in really any facet of reality, in that, be it social change and progress, economic change and progress, technological, whatever way you want to look at it and focus on, you got to take care of the most precious resource available to us, and that's ourselves. That's your fellow person.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's also like, like you said, like as a veteran in America, you have like certain rules. You can't just go to any doctor. They just tell you this doctor, and if it smells away, then screw you. You go there. You don't have anything to say as a veteran about how you want your care. You just have to swallow and take it as they give it to you, and it's not enough.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I'm sick and tired of it being that whole, oh, it's not enough thing. No, that's bullshit. That is complete. That is a bullshit answer for everything.
I'm just saying it should be better. You should
Yeah.
have like a choice in who and how you get your care, and it's just not that way. You just have to swallow what they present to you. And that was one of the biggest frustrations of that guy I dealt with. So and many good people get like treated in such a bad way by the insurance companies, especially if they were a veteran. I mean, come on, even I, as a European, have to thank the Americans mostly for my freedom and safety.
Oh, that's a problem that's universal to all insurance coverage in America. Is as long as there's an insurance company involved, they're going to tell you what doctors you can and cannot see, because that's based upon the insurance contract, not the coverage itself.
Well, that's a sad. I'm sorry.
No, I do agree with that, because you should be able to get the proper and adequate care for your situation based on who's available, what's available, and where and how you are able to access that care. So I don't agree with those restrictions, but I will also be a realist and recognize this now. Rapid change is not comfortable change. Rapid change also can be damaging change. If we want to change these sorts of minutiae to the situations, especially when it comes to, let's just keep it at the medical care side. If we want to get better at how medical care is administered and controlled and paid for and compensated for, it needs to be a reasonable and progressive change. That way you're not destroying an entire industry that is providing people with a living wage, and at the same time you're not blowing up the system so much that people are going to be left behind and forgotten about. It really does need to be a long-term progressive plan that does the shift in that appropriate manner. So over the years, I will admit I have been a vocal opponent of a lot of what the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, how it was laid out. And that's because I saw issues with how it was laid out and how it was going to be administered compared to what my experience has been both at that time, both in the private sector and in under the military healthcare system. So I saw flaws that a lot of people wouldn't have thought about. So yes, I was against some of it then. However, the overarching thought and drive and reason to allow the medical care industry, the medical care process to improve so less people are left behind, that less people are put into financial dire straits because of a medical condition, that part I agree with. I just disagreed with how they were trying to go about it and recognizing issues that were going to take place.
Mhm. Well, really quick, did you know this about the ACA? That it wasn't just a static bill, it was a series of things that were going to happen. The way it was going to roll out was stretched out over multiple years. In fact, it hasn't finished rolling out yet.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, and that was actually when I was vocal against it, and uh, for a colorful phrase, when I was throwing the bullshit flag against it, was the initial draft that was released publicly that a lot of federally elected officials admitted that they had already considered and or had already uh, solidified what their vote was going to be before they even read it. I actually took my time to read the initial, what was it, 1,053 page draft of it.
yeah, it's
Now,
a painful read too.
oh
Very
God, yeah, it was. It took me a good 2.5 weeks to get through it, but once I did, I identified where the issues were, and I was like, okay, this is what I take issue with. And since then, there was another few hundred pages of addendums and clarifications and tweaks to it, which gave us what ultimately was, which part of it was that longer term and that longer deployment, which
Yeah, the
was
initial
one of
one.
my which was one of my criticisms at first.
Yeah, the initial one where they wanted to roll everything out in like 5 years was an insane schedule. um, Unfortunately, it's never been friggin' funded the way it should been. The initial funding was less than half of what everyone said it needed, and then since then it's been cut. So it's amazing that the thing's up and running at all, in my opinion.
Mm.
Uh, but one of the key changes that I was really happy about is a change that happened actually the year that, 2016. Began 2016. So the year that they really tried to kill it. They began changing the way doctors get paid. It used to be doctors were getting paid just by, we did this thing, pay us money. We did this thing, pay us money. But in 2016, they began changing that from we did this thing to we successfully treated you for this. Pay us money for that.
Hmm.
It was less the procedures and more the fact that they successfully cured something. So it's less like paying someone per nail to build a chair and paying someone to actually build a quality chair. One, you just end up with the torturer's rack. The other one, you end up with a usable thing. Um, it it seems like minutia, but it's very important, that distinction, because it changes the incentive from doctors from doing tests and doing surgeries or procedures to actually just getting down and fixing what's wrong with you. because they also receive penalties for their pay if they do a bad job. So if you go in for a broken arm and it gets set and it's crooked at the end, they'd actually lose payment for that. Or if you have a treatment that should take, X amount of months, and it instead takes a doctor a year, they lose payment for that.
And I definitely that wasn't something that I remember from the first draft, and that is a change that I do. I can agree with that whole, rather than it being a blanket. Okay, you provided this service. Here's your payment. No, there is that incentive. There is that reason to. The care shouldn't just be, okay, you came in with this, I treated this, bye bye. It's like it. No, it is that more holistic approach of, you were suffering from this, we were able to take care of that, now you can go on and live a fruitful and more complete or higher quality of life going forward, and having it again be about that outcome of care, not the procedural aspect.
Another thing I like about that too is part of that law is that the doctor is not allowed to shift the burden of cost to the patient. It's actually illegal for them to shift the penalty fees for, like, if they say you have X disease but you have Y disease. If they mess up your care like that, they can't then shift the burden and say, well, your insurance won't pay us for the thing that we treat you for that you didn't have. They actually have to eat that cost themselves. They can't, gouge you for that price.
Yeah, and that is definitely a facet to it that I'm glad to hear from someone who, I will admit, much more experience with it, especially the nuance to it, than I have. And as I was saying, for people who don't know, I'm a technical guy. I've been fascinated with how something is supposed to be put together and works, and the end result that way. There's a reason why I gravitated towards electrical and aeronautical engineering like I did. It's because that, how is something put together and how is it going to attack the problem that it was intended to go towards? That's what I find fun. That's what I find enjoyable. But at the same time, there's other aspects to it that, and other disciplines that I've always had a curiosity, but not that passion that other people have. And I think that is something that is otherwise missing from a good number of aspects that have a direct influence on society as a whole. Instead of pushing people from an educational standpoint to identify and pursue their passions in a healthy manner, at least here in the U.S., there really is a push towards, well, no, you need to make money. You need to go here. This is where jobs are going to be. It doesn't matter if you're not really so capable of it. This is where you're going to be profitable. And I don't see that always working. I actually see that doing more harm than good.
You want to know what's absolutely hilarious about that? Okay. I can't say who I work for because I'm not officially allowed to by my company. I don't have that kind of clearance. But I will say this. My two bosses above me, so my direct boss and then her boss, and I'm not at the bottom rung. I'm fairly in the middle of the company. Both of them, their degree that they have is theater.
Interesting.
They do not have a business degree, a science degree, or anything like that. They're both theater majors. As long as you have a degree, is really what the corporate world looks at.
And see, there are times I wonder, it's like, okay, why? Like, how does that work? But here's the funny thing. Throughout uh, from middle school and throughout high school, I was an active member of the theater, was an active member of the drama club at my schools. So I've actually seen what goes into a lot of the stage productions and a lot of what the follow on would be for people who pursue degrees in that realm. So I can see where someone with a theater major background from a collegiate sense could actually end up in the corporate world and actually in management, because a lot of dealing with stuff backstage is psychology and dealing with interpersonal relationships and managing, which what is a lot of corporate management. It's that it's having enough wherewithal on the psychological side to manage your team and achieve whatever goals are set from management above you, and making sure that you're not just a number cruncher type, but you're actually taking care and leading your team of people towards those goals to either meet or exceed them. So that one, although interesting that those degrees would end up in that field, them being in slightly higher management doesn't entirely shock me. It was just, wait, going from theater to medical insurance?
Oh, not to give you. Okay, it's not reflected in my paycheck, but 2 levels above me, the only one she reports to is the CEO.
Yeah, so she's right there, either at or just below the decision making level, which
Yeah.
which you're still, to get to that level. You also have that progression, maybe not in that company but in another company, where at some point she did have a lower tier management position, but those management styles and those foundations, and from what my view of it is, those tenets of appropriate management are there throughout. It's just the level of people you're dealing with are different. You're higher up in the pyramid, so you have fewer people directly below you, but you still need to have the evaluation and wherewithal to put those people in the proper position to help the grander scheme go forward. I mean, if you have a weak base below you, you're not going to go very far.
By the way, that very sentiment always amazes me why we treat our base like absolute crap. Every corporation that I've worked for has treated their base just like, oh, easy come, easy go, but they're the ones that actually make the company. I think you'd respect them a bit more.
Yeah. Well, and my read of that really has been, it really comes down to one delineation: the difference between a leader and a boss. And I characterize the difference being, a boss is someone who will crack the whip, who will be behind the desk, someone who is more dictatorial as opposed to fostering in their style. I'm not saying that a leader can't have those tendencies from time to time, but it's not the resounding thing. Pretty much that the boss that everyone sees, well, he's just an asshole. He's just this. Whereas a leader has that fluidity to it, to where the delivery style is different based on the situation, the urgency, and also who they are interacting with. There are times, even with the larger group of a whole, a leader will still have the tool behind them to be stern, to have that finality of, no, this is what we need to get done and this is how it needs to happen. But at the same time, that is not the go-to. Whereas the go-to is a little more, is a little more tailored to the team that they have and what their team excels at, to then address whatever the goal is appropriately for the skill set of the team. Pretty much, instead of trying to take a round plug and stuff it with a square, it's vice versa. You actually tailor your style to what you are dealing with. So it ends up building more of that trust. And there was a TED Talk that I came across recently where the presenter had actually spoken with a number of the leaderships and even the lower levels of the special operations teams, specifically the SEALs. And they have a unique way of identifying people on the team and how to determine who is going to be who they want on their SEAL team, who they want on their operational detachment, their actual grouping. And part of it, a lot of people, there are two things. You have your performance tier and your trust tier. You have those two factors. While you can have someone who is high performance but low trust, pretty much your balls to the wall guy, but who is essentially selfish, while that person may look good on the surface because, hey, he's a high performer, he gets shit done, but he does it in a overarching, in a long-term negative fashion. What the SEAL teams and what this guy ended up identifying is that the real glue to keeping any organization moving forward and progressing appropriately is you want to actually have a good amount of mid-performing, high-trust people. Because those are people who understand a balance and who are really the glue of a properly functioning team, no matter what type of team you're going at. Because they do get stuff done. They might not be the top performer, best performers, but they still get things done. But when no matter what else is happening, they have that high trust factor. They have that sense that anyone in the team, if they need a hand, they can rely on that person to give them some sort of assistance in some sort of manner. And I believe that that trust factor and that cooperative factor is what gets overlooked a shit ton, especially when it comes to identifying management candidates.
Hell, there's also another fun aspect about just the general way corporations work right now, or at least most do. It's everyone gets promoted to the point of incompetence. Because you do well at your job, you're doing good, they promote you up to the next position. You do well, you do good, they promote you up to the next position. You're always pushed to go to that next position, even if you like your current one, until you hit a point where you suck at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where they keep you.
And you know what? It's odd you say that, because when I got to the Kitty Hawk, when I transferred to my second permanent duty station, I relocated to Japan. And for those who haven't heard this before, I arrived there as an E4, as higher junior leadership, but not exactly mid-tier leadership at that point. It was really a very flexible pay grade and position that I was in. I could go in and just be a technical person, just work on the gear and be kind of low tier that way, or I could end up in more supervisory type stuff depending on what was going on and what was needed. Well, the timing worked out that as I was transferring in onto the boat and into the shop, the resident E5, who was the actual production supervisor on day one when I showed up, he was getting ready to leave during that next time, during that import period, during that lull between operational time out at sea. So that position of who was going to be the production supervisor was open. Before I had even started checking into the command, that the shop leadership person, the LPO, the leading petty officer, who was the position above that production supervisor spot, was someone that I worked for in Florida just 6 months prior. He didn't even give me the opportunity to say no. He said, "You're going to be my production supervisor, so don't get too comfy with the guys yet, because you're going to be in charge in a few weeks when you're done with your check-in." And when I looked around at the shop after that, I saw that there were a couple E5s there, and I asked him, I was like, why aren't they taking it? Why isn't one of them taking the spot over? And the answer he gave me was, they don't want it, and I don't think they can handle it. They're great techs. They're going to help you in that aspect. They know their gear like the back of their hand, but they don't want the leadership role, and I don't think they would be good at it. So I'm not even going to set them up for that failure.
See, that's good leadership right there. By the way, I love the voluntold. I don't know how many times that has happened to me. I've been voluntold for a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing with it, is it really shocked me, but at the same time, after that, I asked him, I was like, okay, so why me? And he was like, and Rich, freaking Jerry, came out and said, it's like, well, I know you know the gear. I have no doubt when it comes to the technical issues and the technical guidance, I'm not even worried about watching you work on the gear, because I know you'll know it, and the stuff that you don't, that we have here that we didn't in Jax, you'll pick up really freaking quick. I have no worries there. But you're coming in clean, and I saw how you handled training the new people in Jax. You're going to do that here too. You're going to make sure that people here have the same standards that we did there. And for those people who may not remember, I actually still have my freaking evals from this time. In Jacksonville, I was a part of the crew where when I showed up in Jacksonville, we had a backlog of maintenance actions just for working on gear that was approaching 300 individual items. By the time I left, 4. And that's with constantly new gear to work on coming in every day. We got everyone up to proficiency, and with the number of people we had in the shop, with them being proficient, we were able to get through that entire backlog and then some, and we ended up saving the money costs in repair costs because we weren't wasting time and misidentifying things. And part of that is by knowing the gear, knowing how to do it, and knowing the programs, and just that, putting the people in the right position to meet the goal. And if you identify a deficiency, well, guess what? You can't transfer someone or fire someone necessarily from a job in the military, but you can strategically place them and actually give them the guidance and give them the opportunity. So with all of that, he says, like, next step, I know you can handle it at this lower level. Time to see how you handle it at the big time. And of course it goes quiet. So anyone else in the voice chat want to have any questions or commentary about anything? I mean,
there was one thing I kind of wanted to have a chat with you about. I don't know if you covered it earlier, because I'm not quite sure how much of the beginning I missed. But with your foundation, have you figured out how you're going to find the people you're going to help?
That is actually a hurdle that has not been ironed out, but a couple of the avenues that I have already started laying the groundwork for, part of it is a big part of it, and a big part of these aid programs really is word of mouth. with having the dedicated website and advertising and the social networking aspect, that gets things rolling and started. However, I have also started making inroads with larger platforms, other platforms, including local news agencies, to actually, similar to what I'm doing here, explaining what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and where it's going towards, and what we're offering. Having that put out
Yeah.
on through radio platforms, radio interviews, television stuff, and really getting that multidimensional word out there. But before I can get to that, I need to get the actual corporation funded and founded and actually legitimized, and then that next avenue actually has multiple facets to it. It not only is it's not just going to get me out to the people who I am looking to benefit, it's also getting the word out there of people who are looking to help and letting them know how they can help, either by being a volunteer or by being financially supportive of it. So those sorts of things, it ends up covering both sides of that group, both the people who are going to be benefiting and the people who want to help get those people the benefits.
Yeah, because that's the one thing that, in my experience and with my experience of working with an organisation that is helping to provide services to veterans for mental health, it is actually um, getting to find the person you want to help, getting them to know that you're willing to help, and another big problem you have is getting them to trust that you will help.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we have the Royal British Legion in the UK, the Poppy Appeal, which a lot of people have heard of, and they do some really wonderful work with veterans. I've benefited from their help in the past, but they can be very patchy on the veteran getting to speak to the right person to provide the help.
Yeah.
Very often they say, "Oh, you need to contact our call centre," and you phone the call centre, and because very often the person in the call centre is working from a script, if you don't hit the buttons on the script, they will turn around and say, "We can't help you," even when they can.
And that's
Because I actually had that on one occasion. I ended up talking to the call centre instead of directly to the person who was helping me, and I essentially got "I don't think we can help you with that" out of them.
Yeah. And it's those sorts of things, and navigating the other avenues that are already available, that is actually something that I've considered and had in mind, where it's one of those, they're for, especially for the volunteer aspect of people who are volunteering their time to be on the phone, to be that first or second line of contact to getting someone the help that they need. There is going to need to be a framework to help them guide through to make sure that the person is pointed in the right direction. And that's part of the research and drafting that I'm still working on, that really is difficult, because ideally another avenue that I want to explore and be open to once this is rolling and starting to provide what it wants to, or in a position that it can, I want to be able to go to an organization like USA Cares, like the Gary Sinise Foundation, going to these other private entities that are offering aid programs, and interface with them on what are your actual criteria, what are you looking for. That way, if I get someone calling me that actually does qualify for services that you have, we can help each other help that person and actually end up making all of these programs have an avenue and have a willingness to work together. Because there are a lot of programs out there who are willing and able and set up to help specifically veterans and first responders who were injured and are severely injured on the job, to include like amputations or severe physical limitations. There's a plethora of organizations out there that are helping that group. Well, me personally, I don't qualify in that sense, so I cannot utilize them as an avenue. But if I didn't know that and reached out to them, if they were aware of, okay, well, we can't help you, unfortunately, because this is what we offer, and you don't qualify for things with us. However, before you get discouraged, we know this other organization that, from our information, you qualify with them. If you would like, I can either give you their number for you to call them, or I can have them call you and have that network. Really, when I compare it to taking that safety net and filling the hole so we no longer have people drop through, that's what I mean. I don't want to supplant and close other foundations that are doing phenomenal work in their own right. I want to make sure that we are helping everyone that needs it. Does that kind of help make sense in that aspect, Alan?
Yeah, as I say, I think you may well be very disappointed in how easy you find it is to work with other.
Oh, I know it's not going to be easy.
Because even within the county of Norfolk where I live, I see stuff like this happening every week, where where different organisations just refuse to work together.
Yep, and that's kind of what
it is really frustrating and disappointing.
Oh, I'm not expecting it to be easy. I'm actually expecting a lot of no's from those other organizations. I'm going in knowing full well that it is going to be a massive hurdle in that aspect. But that doesn't mean I can't work and strive towards it. And really to me, the better way to play that really is by playing that personal side of it and really get them to rethink maybe why are they doing it. And which is why I point towards the Gary Sinise Foundation and his work through the Lieutenant Dan band and everything that he has set up, because they are structured in such a way that their target really is helping the people and the groups that they have identified that they want to actually aid. I have a better chance of getting help from them on a publicity and a partnership aspect because of Mr. Sinise's track record of working with veterans in outright, and also because I'm not going to be taking away from anything they are doing. My aim really is to identify people that may come to them for help, but because of whatever's going on, if they're not able to, that's where I come in, to where I'm not looking to take market share away from them. I mean, some people might look at it as, well, you're trying to take funding away from them. No, it's not that either. Because if I was really looking at getting in on exactly what they're doing, why wouldn't I take all of this and take this view and this goal and this target that I have, why wouldn't I take it to them directly and try to vie for it and actually start working for that foundation if that was the case? It's not. I don't want to take away from other avenues. I don't want to rob from Peter to pay Paul. That's completely not the purpose here.
Yeah, no, it was just because of stuff that's going on with the organisations that I'm involved with at the moment. I just thought it would be a really good question to ask you, because obviously it's something I see regularly, helping out at the centre.
Yep.
Okay.
No, and so for those out there watching, and those who were looking on the back end, I'm gonna let everyone know who's been a part of this and who's been watching. I am going to end up clipping a good portion of the conversation here to really trim it down and target it to just specifically the business aspect stuff. That way, if you want to let someone know about what's going on, about why I'm doing it, what the actual target is, and the questions that have been asked specific to it, I'm going to have a condensed video available for people to share around to get the word out there. And that video also will be tied in with the GoFundMe, which is just to get the first percentage of the funding needed to get this off the ground, and all other avenues. And where it goes from there, my hope is that it gets everywhere possible. Again, this is something that has been simmering in the back of my head for a while, and it's something that I've been working on in the background the last couple months. And it's only been the past few weeks that I've made it public, because it really is at the point where, for the next step to happen, for the next phase of progress to take place, funding is needed. I am at a funding limitation at this point right now, and I want this to happen. And the only way that I can help make that happen at this point is by letting everyone know, by answering your questions, by putting the information out there of the how, the why, and the what we are going to be doing with this. And if someone wants to be a part of it, either to volunteer their time if there's help that they can provide based on their area of expertise, or if they just want to help out on the foundation through a volunteer basis on helping be a point of contact once things are started, that's great. If you know people who may be willing to even become an equity partner in this, I am not opposed to that as well. My primary thing with that is, if you are going to quite literally buy in to help this progress and be a thing, be ready to go and share the passion, because without the passion that I have for it, this wouldn't be a thing right now. And personal issues aside, every person, every human being out there deserves to have compassion and aid, grace, and help in their time of need. You can have philosophical differences. That doesn't matter. If someone needs help, they need to know that they have a place to go to get the help they need.
Okay. I realized I was muted. I tried to talk earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt you because you were on a roll there. When you said I don't want to rob Peter to pay, or however that saying goes,
Mm-hmm.
Don't buy into that. That is propaganda. How do you think insurance works?
No,
You literally, everyone pays into a pool of money. That pool of money goes to pay for when people get sick. That is the basic fundamental of insurance.
well, I guess let me be more specific on that. Is I don't want to undermine another enterprise's uh, reputable and worthy pursuits for my own. I am not looking at destroying or negatively affecting another worthy um, benefactor's work just because I want to go further. I am definitely about cooperation, not replacement of what they're doing.
I'm just like, if you're going to go about this, don't be afraid to do that thing, because that's literally, if you're not doing that, you're not insurance. You're not helping anyone at that point. There is also one other thing that I kind of wanted to get to this back with the other guy, and this was a while ago, but I had to mute myself for a while. When we were talking about your insurance takes, dictates what you can and cannot do and see and go to.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way to fix that. It's actually a fairly simple way to fix that. Remove the networks. You don't have to remove the insurance, just remove specifically the networks portion of the insurance. Because that's what generates that situation, is the insurance companies make a contract with the providers saying, hey, if we send our people to you, you have to give our people a discount. That's, the deal. Otherwise, we're not going to let our people see you. If you remove that network, the ability for the insurance company to dictate that to the doctors, not only will the prices no longer be artificially inflated, because that has a massive problem during your deductible phase, because your deductible phase can sometimes see that massive price if the adjustment doesn't happen properly. But then it also removes any reason for the insurance company not to allow you to go see any doctor you wish. So if we could get that through at some point in time, just that one change, it would be a game changer in America. It would be amazing.
No, and I think it would be interesting to see how just that one change would end up panning out. And I wonder what other changes would end up being a subsequent effect of that initial role of whatever overarching changes end up happening. Almost like that from a cartoon where they start rolling a snowball down the hill, and as it's going, it gets larger and larger and larger. With that being an initial push, it would be interesting to see where it ended up going.
Yeah, that would be it'd be quite fun to watch that one build. It's just everyone's always talking about how complicated things are to fix and stuff like that. It's, well, yeah, it's complicated in the long run, but if you begin somewhere, that'd be where I begin. Because the best way to solve any problem is break it down into steps you can easily take. That seems like a good step to me.
Well, so my wife actually has transitioned to more of a advisory position with some of what she's doing, and there's a mantra that she had picked up that I will admit I remember hearing growing up and had subsequently forgot about, that she ended up reminding me of years ago. And the question ends up being, How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. All it takes is that initial step, that initial nudge, that first movement towards a particular goal, no matter how large or small it is. You're never going to get there unless you take that first step.
Mm-hmm. It's something that my mom always taught me is take this, whatever task you think is impossible, break it down into possible steps. And then pretty soon you'll see that that impossible task is done.
Yep. And that is the beauty of the analysis and planning phases of any venture is where am I trying to go? What do I need to get there? And how can I make it possible? How can I set up achievable benchmarks along the way? Because if you are standing here on the surface of the earth and you're looking up at the stars in the middle of the night and you want to get to that point of light, however thousands and millions of light years away it is, if you try to go from here to there like that, it'll never happen. But if you start realizing, well, if I get from the surface of the earth, if I just am able to maintain flight, and then from maintaining flight, if I'm able to get up to orbit, and if I'm able to go from there and just reach the moon and be able to set up something there, and then if I'm able to go this further out, if you start putting those stepping stones in place, suddenly that distance doesn't seem as far.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we have been going just shy of 2 hours live. For those people outside watching in YouTube land, I thank you all for being here. I'm going to let you all know something, though. The conversation's going to keep going in the Discord server, so if you want to come in, link is in the live chat there for you to come join us. And until the next time we go live, be safe out there, people. Be safe and keep chugging away at whatever your dream is. Anything is achievable as long as you put your mind to it. For those of you not coming along, we'll see you next time.
Okay.